Supply chains are crucial for the global economy, and Europe's growing dependency on them could, in times of crisis, present it with a critical problem.
You saw how dependent we are on India and China.
And where the goods actually come from is not always clear.
They make sure that every single tree felled has actually been sustainably managed.
Some companies are already developing new sustainable production practices and supply chains with greater transparency. Körting is a businesswoman and a conservationist. Her company, Betterwood, imports tropical timber to Germany. In order to ensure that the resulting decking boards and garden furniture are genuinely fair trade, she makes regular visits to the places where the wood is sourced.
We always wanted to do something that we could be committed to, something that makes sense and is worth working for. The idea is to protect the rainforest by selling tropical wood products.
Protecting the rainforests with tropical timber might initially sound counterintuitive, but upon closer inspection, it actually makes a lot of sense. From the original tree to the final polished boards, Betterwood is careful to ensure eco-friendly sourcing. Her company has a long-standing partnership with timber supplier Maderacre. Formerly a teacher, Reinaldo Pacheco is now a forestry worker because he cares about the future of the rainforest. Körting gets to see exactly what his work looks like on the ground. The state of Madre de Dios in southeastern Peru boasts a unique ecosystem. And it's here that Colombian-born Körting sources her high-quality tropical timber. Practically the entire region is untouched rainforest, with enormous biodiversity. 1 single hectare is home to hundreds of tree species, as well as countless different plants and animals.
On the one hand, you have this wealth of biodiversity. 2/3 of the flora and fauna live in the rainforests. These places are important for water cycles and serve as carbon sinks. And on the other hand, you have the people who live by the rainforest and see it as an area that's easy to cut down and use as farmland, which provides them with an income. That's also important to take into consideration.
As they progress deeper into the jungle, Körting and Reinaldo repeatedly come across signs of illegal deforestation.
They're doing this to raise cattle.
I see.
Just cattle and nothing else, which would change the forest radically.
Yes, absolutely.
Clearing all of this land would normally mean hiring machinery for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
But given the high cost, it would be easier to just destroy it.
To burn it down.
An hour later, you have this here.
The situation is a familiar one around the planet. Pristine and precious nature illegally razed to the ground, with ancient giants of the forest destroyed forever. Between 1990 and 2020, the world lost a staggering 420 million hectares of woodland, an area greater than the entire European Union. A situation that the EU intends to tackle with a new and pioneering law. Companies have to ensure that rainforest products such as timber, palm oil, and coffee have not contributed to deforestation or the destruction of nature. That means having to prove the precise origin of their goods. Körting began implementing those now mandatory practices many years ago. She often checks her Peruvian suppliers' operations in person, and that they comply with very specific requirements. The entrance to this protected area is guarded round the clock.
From here onwards, all you have is jungle, green, and a healthy ecosystem. We don't allow hunting, for example, or anything being removed from the forest without prior approval. The aim is to minimize human intervention and collateral damage.
Katharin Körting's wood supplier, Maderacre, manages the areas of woodland that can be used, with specific requirements. That means only a tiny proportion of trees in this vast expanse are felled each year. It takes 6 hours for Katharin to navigate her way through the rainforest to see the harvesting firsthand. All the trees here are digitally registered, enabling the forestry workers to know the exact location of a tree designated for felling. A management plan covering the entire area determines which trees can be cut down without disturbing the sensitive ecosystem.
This number, 18488, is the tree's registration code. It's a tag that serves as a kind of birth certificate for the tree supply chain.
This giant of the jungle has been cleared for removal. But Reynaldo Pacheco has his reservations.
We're worried that the tree might have a hole in it. These little defects here are normally a sign of termites. First, we'll do a hole test to avoid felling a tree that isn't really usable. It involves making a vertical cut to reduce the damage to the tree and to keep it strong enough to withstand the wind.
And is it hollow?
Yes.
Okay.
A now hollow tree is worth little on the market, but will remain a valuable member of the jungle ecosystem. The team continue tracking down a suitable tree for Katharin's Wood Products Company.
Looks pretty good.
Here in Austria, a medicine of vital importance to humanity is produced. It's mixed in these huge steel vats, like dough in a bakery. And little by little, the 150 million liters of liquid are turned into a white powder, penicillin. Thousands of tons are produced here every year. The market town of Kundl has a history of penicillin production going back to 1946. Should some crisis arise, it could be pivotal for Europe's entire supply of antibiotics. Chemist Stefanie Jedna heads active ingredient production at medicine manufacturer Sandoz and is aware of how important her work is.
It's rewarding to be producing vital, life-saving medicines for Europe and the whole world. It's an important job which gives me motivation to come back here every day, working together with my colleagues to supply Europe with penicillin.
The plant churns out up to 200,000 tons of fermentation broth per year. Half of all the packs of penicillin sold in Europe now come directly or indirectly from Kundl, either as medication or an active ingredient. It's the last remaining penicillin factory in the whole of Europe. The antibiotic is a generic drug, which means it's sold at considerably lower prices.
Generics are drugs where the basic patent has expired. Prices are very low, and penicillin is now cheaper than a pack of chewing gum.
The resulting economic pressure for pharmaceutical companies is prompting many of them to stop producing generic drugs. At the turn of the millennium, around 2/3 of their active ingredients were still produced in Europe, with the remaining third coming from Asia. Today, that ratio has been reversed, with 2/3 of manufacturing now being in countries such as China and India. Pharmaceuticals production there costs a fraction of what it does in Europe.
Hallo zusammen.
a situation that increases Europe's outside dependency and poses a potential threat to its supplies. In 2023, Germany's Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Services registered shortages affecting around 500 medicines, including for penicillin.
It takes time to build capacities back up again, but we're making very good progress. It will take a while, however, until we're able to reach the production levels currently required by the markets. We were at around 100 million packs, and now demand is at 240 million, so more than 2.5 times the amount during COVID.
To cope with future requirements, the company behind the facility has built an additional plant in Kundl, subsidized by the Austrian government. CEO Hannes Werner knows how important the facility is for antibiotics production.
Getting the subsidies wasn't easy, but we got great support from the Austrian government. COVID helped us to steer the debate in a particular direction, because you could see how much and how quickly we had become dependent on India and China. And also with COVID-related supply issues, and this being the last production site in Europe, these were key factors in ultimately getting the go-ahead.
Kundl is already being called a last bastion for guaranteeing Europe's supply of antibiotics. Around 240 million packs of medicine leave the plant every year.
The plant has been making preparations to supply the whole of Europe. So if there were to be supply stoppages in India or China, we'd be able to supply patients in Europe.
And when it comes to EU support for such production facilities, the company boss is cautiously optimistic.
We have a foot in the door, with discussions moving in the right direction. We have a sound working relationship with the EU authorities and the Austrian government.
The example of Kundl shows how Europe can become more independent in the struggle against supply bottlenecks, meaning greater security in times of disasters and other crises. Over in Peru, this protected area of rainforest supplies the wood for the decking boards made by Körting's company in Germany. She makes sure that the tree removals fulfill all sustainability standards. This seems to be a suitable specimen. Felling the tree means there will be no further removals in this hectare of jungle for 20 years, which will give the forest sufficient time to recover.
Yes, it is taking something from nature, and you shouldn't downplay that. But looking at the bigger picture, with everything else happening on the ground and with the climate, this kind of management is important and actually makes a lot of sense for protecting the rainforest.
Once several suitable trees have been removed, they're sent to a nearby sawmill. Living right next to the nature reserve are a number of indigenous communities, who also profit from sustainable wood sourcing. Today, Körting is meeting Valeria Lopez, chief of the Yine people.
Nice to meet you, Valeria. What exactly do you do here?
We trade in wood. We have the certification for working with sustainable timber.
FSC?
Yes.
Okay.
The Yine are among the suppliers for Körting's partner, Mararacre, a cooperative venture that not only has financial benefits.
How does Maderacre support you?
We have an agreement where they help us with our craft work and with social issues, like health and education.
Valeria Lopez shows her visitor around the tribal forest reserves. Protecting their backyard is, of course, a priority for the Yine. For them, treating the trees with care and respect is nothing new. It's an ancient tradition.
Do you do selective felling? Making sure beforehand that a tree's features meet the right conditions?
Yes, each tree has to be of a certain size, and we leave the other one standing for future harvests.
The sustainable management approach protects the primeval forest and the Yine's homeland, while also guaranteeing them a decent and secure livelihood.
If there's a way of giving people an income for working and protecting the rainforest, but in a sustainable way, then people are going to do that.
Wood harvesting, conservation, and community support work go hand in hand here. The timber provided by the Yine is likewise processed at the nearby sawmill run by Körting's timber supplier.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
¿Qué tal? Mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto, Katrin.
Eder Zuniga is the operations manager at the sawmill and has been working with timber for 15 years now. The mill also belongs to Maderacre and delivers tropical timber for customers in Germany and other countries. Its high ecological standards and social commitment make it a rarity in Peru. All the wood here is processed sustainably.
We can track every step, from standing tree to its final destination. So when the wood arrives, you know when and where it was cut down and when it was dispatched. We know the entire supply chain.
Supply chains include everything that is required to manufacture a particular product. The planning stage is followed by raw materials extraction and processing, then the manufacture of the finished product before delivery to customers. Monitoring the entire supply chain is complicated and time-consuming. As Körting isn't able to constantly fly to South America, she has to rely on verification by third parties.
We have an audit done by an independent non-profit organization, the FSC. They physically go into the forest to check that every tree felled has actually been managed sustainably. And we check suppliers via various sources, most of them independent. That helps us to ensure that the wood really does come from sustainable sources.
While she does her best to monitor things herself, in many cases, industrial customers can't have their eyes everywhere. And with ecological standards varying from country to country, not even NGOs like the FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council, manage to ensure full transparency everywhere. Which is why the FSC labels are not without their critics. At the same time, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, Oro Verde, and other environmental organizations recommend looking for the FSC label when buying wood products, saying that it does provide an important indicator.
For us, FSC is the best certification currently available. It takes into account the highest ecological standards as well as social factors.
From the sawmill on the edge of the rainforest, the next stop for Körting's wood is one of the biggest ports in South America. After arriving in Lima, it's loaded onto a ship headed for Germany. From this point on, it would be extremely difficult to smuggle illegal timber along with the shipment. The Tunin Institute of Wood Research is an authority on the precise identification of timber from all over the planet.
Here's a new sample.
Immo Heinz and Gerhard Koch receive inquiries from authorities, timber dealers, consumers, and industry associations on a daily basis.
Decking boards.
That'll be about which tropical tree species is involved, perhaps also because more of them are being placed under protection.
In the fight against the illegal timber trade, the EU requires suppliers to prove the provenance of each timber. Immo Heinz and his team provide that legally watertight proof. In many cases, the experts from the Tunin Institute need to literally just look through a magnifying glass to determine the species in question.
Best take a cut anyway.
They also examine the wood structure under a microscope to ensure their assessments are legally admissible. The Tunin Institute has an enormous archive to draw upon to identify the exact type of tree. It comprises around 11,300 botanically documented species. From hard to heavy to soft to light, it enables them to compare every sample that comes in.
The Institute's wood collection is one of the largest in the world and includes around 35,000 samples. So when we receive an unknown or rare type of wood, we can compare it with our samples and see whether it's one of the botanically documented species in the collection.
While the species of a tree can be identified with a microscope and magnifying glass, its precise origin cannot. That's where forest geneticist Céline Blanc-Jolivet comes in, with a DNA assessment. She takes a piece of wood and compares it with the genetic code of other types of tree.
These are DNA fragments from a wood sample that apparently comes from the Loreto region of northern Peru. Here we have 3 different reference samples from Peru. And if we look at the color of the peak here, this is a red one, as also seen in the reference sample from the north of Loreto. The samples from the southern area all have a black peak, which means that the northern Loreto declaration matches up.
So this sample of tropical timber does have the correct origin. But that's not always the case.
For 2023, we have a total of 13% with an incorrect declaration. Either the wrong species, wrong origin, or both. A false declaration, of course, means a greater likelihood of it being illegal.
The amount of orders for wood species testing has grown continuously since the Research Institute was founded.
I want us to help curb illegal logging and in the process maintain the biodiversity of the tropical rainforest. And at the same time, of course, help to counteract climate change, or at least slow it down.
That detective work plays a key role in making timber supply chains both more secure and more transparent. Several weeks after it was shipped out from Peru, Körting finally receives her delivery of wood. The company warehouse outside Cologne is stocked solely with certified tropical timbers. Betterwood is a family-run enterprise.
How many do we have?
5 more and then that's it.
Together with her brother and father, she prepares a delivery of planks that will be sent out today for a patio in Poland. Tropical timbers are extremely hard and robust, making them ideal for outdoor use.
People always think that regional is good, But tropical wood is simply a fantastic product. In comparison, native wood species are by nature not as resistant. So they have to be subjected to complicated, often energy-intensive processes to increase that resistance.
Despite the lengthy supply routes, tropical timber can be an alternative to German varieties of wood, provided it's sustainably harvested. Katrin Körting is convinced that making tropical wood products will help to protect the rainforests.
I want my daughter to get to know the rainforest when she grows up too. And for more people to learn that tropical timber does not in itself destroy the rainforest. Sustainable management, in fact, protects the forest. And that's particularly important to me, coming as I do from Colombia. So for me, the rainforest is kind of a reminder of home.
Katrin Körting's supply chain is already deforestation-free, showing just what is possible when it comes to protecting people and the planet, when the will and commitment are there.